Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast about The Nanny. The Nanny is a TV show from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. It was a huge hit, and we're fans of it, so we're rewatching it with you. I am Sean DePasquale here with...
Gloria Sheffield.
It's a new episode, Season 3, Episode 16, Where's Fran? And this episode, folks, is a special one because it is our first clip show.
Oh, yeah. I mean, or as I call them, flashback episodes, but that's not really what they're called.
Correct. So a clip show. What's a clip show, Toria?
A clip show is when instead of having the normal episode where it's just like new stuff happening, you usually have a setup scene where, someone will say something like, hey, I can't believe I just had that fight with Marsha. We never get in fights. And then we cut to 5 scenes where they have terrible fights. And then you're
where they were in the past, we cut to 5 clips from old episodes where they have had fights.
Yes. And it's, as we've discussed, I think in previous episodes, these are usually used partly as filler, just when you have to round out a long season and, you have to come up with a ton of ideas. This sort of takes some pressure off. It also can really help with your budget that season because, you don't have to shoot as much. You don't have to pay as many people to come to set because, 75% of your episode is just showing old clips of stuff you've already filmed. So it's kind of like a useful thing when you are managing and running a show for a season. I would say clip episodes are universally disliked. Like I don't know anyone who has ever sat down to watch an episode of one of their favorite shows, realized it was a clip episode, and been like, awesome.
Yeah.
Usually you're like, oh man.
Because if you're really a fan of something and into it, you've seen all this stuff, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to get a new episode this week. It's just going to be like old episodes. The Simpsons in their 4th season, their first clip show was literally titled, So It's Come to This, a Simpsons clip show, which is just such a defeated tone from the writers of we're out of ideas, folks. And that really was my first, I think that's the first time I realized, I had seen so many sitcoms before that and so many clip shows, but it never really occurred to me that was a negative thing. And I think that connotation really made me reconsider it. And now I'm oh, right, this is a lazy, budget saving thing that happens on well, it used to happen more because, we talked about a lot how sitcoms used to be 20 episodes, 27 episodes a season, which is a lot of time to fill. So, and costs a lot of money. Now you get 12 episode seasons and there's not, really time or need for this kind of treatment. But, but it still happens. We'll talk about later some of my favorite clip shows, which are ones that have taken this idea, but really gone outside the box with it.
Yeah. I was just laughing to myself because I was could you imagine a 12 episode sort of mini series using one of their episodes to be a flashback episode.
For just clips. Oh, remember that time? And then it's just shit that just freaking happened.
But so in terms of this specific episode, I will say there were some things I really did like about it, even though I'm usually not a big fan of clip episodes. I thought that the new material that they had was really funny. They used their creative energies to just really knocking one-liners out of the park. And then I really felt that this did have more of a plot than a lot of clip episodes have, and sort of was able to achieve the plot points that a normal 22-minute episode usually has. I
disagree. But I mean, which is not a ding on this. I just think you're giving this more credit than this felt like a clip show. It's usually some kind of silly frame, wraparound device. People or someone is missing, or the Simpsons one was they did a prank that put Homer in a coma, and so they're all in the hospital reminiscing about all the times they've had as a family until he wakes up from the coma. And usually you do get some kind of very slim ABC like sequence of events that like frames all of the clips.
Well,
but this was a good one. Like which is not, again, not to crap on this episode, because this was well done.
Yeah. And so in terms
let's get into it.
Yeah.
Right?
So for this episode, we begin with Val and Fran in the kitchen, and they are discussing how Fran had caught Maggie and her new boyfriend smoking, which is a big deal, obviously. And Val's like, so are you gonna, snitch on her to Mr. Sheffield? And Fran is literally like, no, I can't start snitching on Maggie. Then she'll start snitching on me. She's like, instead, I am gonna let Mr. Sheffield catch me smoking. Maggie's going to see how crazy angry he gets, and it's going to scare her out of ever smoking again, which
terrible plan.
Yeah.
Terrible. Ridiculous. It is a ridiculous plan. Which is also why, like, I disagree with your statement.
Yeah, I guess
this was like a pretty good episode. It's like, it was like a barely there, like, oh, I'm gonna do this dumb thing to like force conflict.
Yeah, well,
and then it causes the largest rift we've ever seen in the history of this show, seemingly out of nowhere, like to the point where like I feel like, because she smokes, and then he walks in with Maggie, Mr. Sheffield, and he freaks out. Like he calls her like a moron. He goes, you're normally, what is it like you're normally stupid, but this is stupid even for you.
But you know what though? I think we maybe grew up in houses that had different approaches to smoking, because
my parents smoked. So
yeah, see, that's okay. There we go. In my house, I literally cannot imagine anything worse than smoking a cigarette. Like
what about never mind. All right, go on.
No, but the idea that
what if someone turned out to be a Nazi, Toria? What about then? That's not worse.
No, not at all. No, but like in terms of stuff that would get you in trouble, like this would be like, it's funny you said Nazis, because I was going to say nuclear holocaust. But so, it would have been for you. I feel like you're like, this seems like a disproportionately large reaction. I'm like, oh, no. Like this checks out. In fact, he sort of kept it slightly toned down compared to what I would have expected had somebody in my household been caught smoking.
I think the thing that bothered me was just that he implies that he always considers her stupid, but in like the pantheon of stupidity, this is the stupidest thing. And like, that's the part that was insulting to me, was like the whole, like, you're normally stupid, but this is stupid even for you. And it's like, so that you think she's stupid normally? Like, that's what you think of Fran? I don't know. It really like rubbed me the wrong way. I was really very much on Fran's side of like, yeah, fuck this guy.
Yeah. Well, because her whole thing is like when he first comes in and he's like, Miss Fine, you're smoking. And she's like, oh no, I can't believe you caught me. And he's like, I've never been so angry. And she's like, oh no. And then he's like, and this is the stupidest thing you've ever done, and you're already stupid. And then she's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then she's like, you better apologize, or like, I am leaving this house. Like, I'm quitting. And he's like, I will not apologize. And she's like, well, fine, then I'm gone. I've had it up to here with your, antics. And then she's like, and by the way, Niles feels the same way. Don't you, Niles? And then Niles like thinks, and he just looks at Mr. Sheffield and goes, who loves your baby? And then starts to pick lint off of his jacket, off of Mr. Sheffield's jacket. So he's clearly like not going to get thrown under the bus for this. But so Fran storms out, and that sets up the the central dilemma of the episode, which is Fran has quit and stormed out, and they're waiting for her to come back throughout the day, and she's not coming back, and she's not coming back. And different members of the household and of the family are approaching Mr. Sheffield and being like, I can't believe you did that. And then so as each character kind of confronts him or asks him about what happened, we then get basically flashbacks. And clips pertaining to like usually that character and Fran. So so it
starts with him being basically like, of all the silly things she's done, and then we get like the, her in the hospital, having to shave his, genitals. And then we get like, and then he says, something like in present day, he says something like, it's not like I'm angry at her all the time. And then we get a super cut of him yelling, Miss Fine, Miss Fine, Miss Fine. Miss Fine, you've got a lot of splaining to do. Yeah. And then we get a flashback of her having to come into the room and tell him about Brighton's small penis.
Yes. I also flagged that. I went, oh yeah, Brighton's penis subplot. Forgot about that one. Like somehow conveniently just didn't
block that one out.
Yeah.
And then the scene. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of my favorites had to do with Fran and Sylvia, because Mr. Sheffield ends up calling Sylvia to be like, maybe she knows where Fran is. And this is like my favorite gag of this episode. Sylvia is sitting at her kitchen table, presumably sitting down to her lunch, which is a full roasted chicken. And she's like, slathering it with ketchup. And she's literally on the phone with Mr. Sheffield. And she goes, well, I haven't heard from her since you called her a brainless, big-haired schmagaggy. So clearly, like Fran had instantly called her mother and exaggerated the story.
And that's a runner throughout the episode, is like every time someone new talks to Mr. Sheffield about what he's done, the thing that he said to Fran gets exaggerated to a ridiculous degree.
Yeah, like I can't believe you called her a brainless, big-haired, like
bimbo. Yeah, like it gets like really, and every time he's like, I didn't say that, and he gets increasingly exasperated because it just gets blown. I mean, he was mean, but it gets blown like way out of proportion.
The other sort of the other part of the joke that I love with the chicken is, as soon as Sylvia says that, she's like, I haven't heard from her since you called her like a brainless, big-haired schmagaggy. She's like, Fran's very sensitive. You really need to talk to her the way I do. And so then we cut to, these funny clips of how Sylvia and Fran are always like yelling at each other. And then when we cut back to the present, which, is like literally just seconds after she said that last line, the chicken has been completely devoured and she just has a plate of chicken bones in front of her, insinuating that she can basically like inhale a full roasted chicken in like 90 seconds.
And then she says like, I'm just so upset I can barely eat.
Yes. And then we have it with a few more, like Cece. We have one with Yetta. And the thing that I loved in the real-time footage of Yetta is the way that she kind of gets introduced into this episode is the doorbell rings at the mansion. And, Mr. Sheffield and Niles are like, oh gosh, maybe it's Miss Fine. Hopefully she's come back. They open the door. It's Yetta escorted by a police officer. And the police officer's like, we found her wandering on Queens Boulevard, and she says she lives here. And we find out that Yetta basically pretends to have dementia so that she can get rides from police officers all over town instead of paying for cabs. And at one point she's like, next time send Officer Kurtz. We listen to Howard Stern together. And then, we have like the Yetta flashbacks, which were great. And at this point, we're literally at like 17 minutes out of a 22-minute episode. Like that's all the plot that's really unfolded because it's been all these flashbacks. And this is when we get some real movement on the Mr. Sheffield Fran dilemma, because up until this point, Mr. Sheffield has like defended his decision and defended his actions. But at this point, he ends up walking into the kitchen and he ends up overhearing Maggie and her boyfriend talking, and they don't like realize he's entered and can hear them. And basically, he hears Maggie be like, hey, like put those away. I quit. And make sure my dad doesn't see them. I want to live long enough to see if Ross and Rachel end up together. And I was like, oh, interesting. A call out to another sitcom. But which I don't think we've had a call out to a contemporary sitcom yet.
No, but it was interesting. I mean, they picked the biggest sitcom on television, so it's kind of hard to ignore that. And I guess they wanted to show that she's like a normal girl, And
then the boyfriend's like, wow, like him freaking out on Fran really scared you, didn't it? And she's like, yeah, it's really crazy. Like, it's almost as if the two of them planned it. Like, that's how well it worked. But no, it couldn't be that because my dad's a really bad actor.
Yeah.
So Mr. Sheffield overhears that and he suddenly realizes, wait, I think I had this all wrong. I think Fran already knew that Maggie had been like experimenting with smoking cigarettes and had orchestrated that whole thing so that Maggie would see how mad I got. And he actually like runs this by Niles, and Niles is basically like, yeah, of course that's what happened, you idiot. And then Mr. Sheffield's like, oh no, what have I done? And, now it's like, getting late. It's like, evening time. It's after dark. And he's like, Miss Fine actually is really smart. Like, what would she do if I was missing? And this is when I just laughed really hard, and I could not wait for you to get to this part of the episode because I knew you'd have thoughts. Niles goes, well, she'd probably remember that, Roger Clinton lives next door, and she'd probably go next door and have him check in with the FBI.
Okay, here's my note for this. I wrote, I guess Roger Clinton comes super cheap. Because it's like, if you're already doing a clip show and you're clearly like doing like saving money and like keeping it all tight, and then you have a guest star that you normally would pay like money to like come and be on the show, but like clearly Roger Clinton, and I remember this, is like this was the joke at the time, is Roger Clinton was desperate to start like an acting career. So he would do anything that anyone asked him to do. He would just like, he was on so many different little cameo appearances. So I just feel like he was like, hey, do you guys need me in another episode? And they're like, yeah, sure.
My note is, wow, they can't keep the ages of their central characters straight, but they're committed to the continuity that Roger Clinton lives next door.
Yeah.
And so, Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, okay, great idea. So then he goes next door and he knocks on Roger Clinton's and Roger Clinton answers the door. And, he's basically like, oh, Roger, could you help me find Fran? I haven't been able to find her in hours. And did you notice, by the way, that all of the photos on the wall were of like Bill and Hillary?
Yeah.
And like, I was like, did they decorate this house?
No, it's because because the joke is like that Roger Clinton just lived in the shadow of his presidential older brother, and he was just this like sad sack that like just was like, I'm tangentially related to the president.
And then, okay, so this scene also brought up something that happened in pop culture at the time, which I did not know about. And I went down such a rabbit hole because it was so insane to me. But basically, Roger Clinton's like, oh, sorry, Maxwell. Like, I haven't seen Fran since you called her. And then he goes, oh, wait, no. That's what Newt Gingrich's mother called my sister-in-law.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I was like, first of all, that's like a lot of gymnastics for a punchline.
Yeah.
But basically he was saying like Newt Gingrich's mother-in-law said something bad about Hillary Clinton. Like that's what that boils down to. And I was like, what happened? So it turned out in 1994 on Connie Chung's show, she was interviewing Newt Gingrich's mother, who at the time was he Speaker of the House?
Yes.
He was Speaker of the House. So he's like,
of the House. Sorry. That's all I think of when I hear Speaker of the House. His name is Master of the House.
Wouldn't it be great if every time a new speaker was put in place, they had all of Congress had to
sing Speaker of the House.
But anyway, so he's literally like third in line for the presidency. But he was a Republican speaker to a Democratic president. And his mother was being interviewed by Connie Chung, and literally Chung goes, this is the exact transcript. I pulled it. She goes, Mrs. Gingrich, what has Newt told you about President Clinton? Mrs. Gingrich, nothing. And I can't tell nothing. And I can't tell you what he said about Hillary. You can't? Gingrich, I can't. Chung, why don't you just whisper it to me, just between you and me? At which point, Kathleen Gingrich leaned in and whispered, she's a bitch. This was on like a televised national interview. It said the interview made headlines before it even aired, as the transcript came out early. Mrs. Gingrich also revealed that, quote, the only thing he ever told me about Bill Clinton is that he's smart, that he's an intelligent man, that he's not very practical, but he's intelligent. She added, I think they had some meeting, and she takes over. But with Nudie there, she can't. It was just like, wow. It was just so, I was like, probably maybe that's why I really enjoyed this episode was there was some great singers, and then there was some things like this, which, sparked my interest.
Speaker of the house, doling out the charm, ready with a handshake and an open palm.
Calling her a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. Calling her a bitch, make a little stir. Constituents appreciate a little bon veneer. Oh,
but
man.
anyway, so that was again a lot of gymnastics just to make reference to that incident.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
And then, Mr. Sheffield's like, I didn't call her anything. I didn't. And Mr. Rogers, sorry. Then Roger Clinton is literally like, sorry, I haven't seen her. But then Fran ends up coming into the room on the telephone. So clearly she didn't run very far. She just ran to Roger Clinton's next door. Yeah. And she's on the phone. She's going, Chelsea. Don't worry. Like, here's what I would do in your situation, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, it's clearly insinuating that she is talking to Chelsea Clinton, who is a teenager at this time living in the White House, and that she's counseling her through some boy trouble. And then Roger's like, oh yeah, like she's just talking to my niece. And then he's like, Hillary's actually looking for a new nanny. And I was like, again, isn't Chelsea like a teenager at this point? Why would she need a nanny?
Maggie needs a nanny.
I would say Gracie needs a nanny.
I guess. Okay.
But anyway, then Fran is on the phone and she's like, oh yeah, put your mother on. And she's like, oh, hi, Hillary. And she's like, you'd offer me how much? I'd get to live in the East Wing. And then Mr. Sheffield like suddenly starts to get really agitated. And he's like, oh no, it's fine. He's like, whatever she offers you, I'll meet it. And then when he hears that, she might get to live in the East Wing, he's like, I'll completely redecorate your room. New drapes, new carpet. And then, and she's like, and I'll get to meet Barbara. And then he's like literally about to walk away because he's like, oh, I've lost. And then she goes, oh, Walters. And then he comes back like ready to try to like renegotiate for her. But then he realizes that the phone is not even plugged into the wall. So this has just been one.
There's also a weird line here where she like makes eye contact with him and she goes, sorry, Hillary, but my old boss can give me something you can't. And like they have this weird like sexual like eye exchange thing. And I was like, what's happening right now?
Well, yeah, they do. And then she goes, or maybe you can. And we cut to the way you're gay moment where like Fran briefly considers dating a woman. Because she's a Jewish professional. Oh, no, because she's a wealthy professional. She's not Jewish. Yeah. But so then Mr. Sheffield realizes that, the phone's not plugged in. And, or maybe it was like right before he realizes this, he's basically like, no, he's like, Miss Fine, please consider it. I'm sorry. I was the stupid one. The children love you. And and then he's about to clearly say like, I love you. And he's like, well, we were getting so close in a strictly professional way, that is. And then we cut to like a kiss compilation between them of other like
and Elizabeth was watching this with me and she went, whoa, they've kissed a lot. And I was like, yeah, they really have. Like
at this point it's like almost like old news.
Just screw already.
I know. And you're like, I guess it's super crazy considering that it's like an employee-employer relationship and they've kissed on the mouth like 10 times.
When you watch the supercut out of context, because Elizabeth was watching this with me and she has not seen most of these episodes. In fact, a lot of the times when we watch the clip, she would go, oh, I've heard you guys describe that. Isn't that funny? And it was so good on us because we've done a very good job at describing what's happening in this show. And but like when we got to the supercut of the kisses, she was just like, I don't know. Like,
no, I agree. I think the thing is, and I guess it's good that we're watching these week by week and we don't really binge them. You know, when you're spacing this out over the course of like 25 weeks, and then there's reruns.
Who are you, Barbara Walters?
I don't know.
Hello, I'm Barbara Walters. Welcome to my show. That was the old. All right,
that sounds like Elmer Fudd.
That was the impression of Barbara Walters on like cartoons and stuff
You're
in the
right.
90s. She would be like, "Hello, I'm Barbara Walters."
That poor woman. But anyway, I think, you know, when you factor in, there's like, you know, say 25 episodes, but they're spaced out with reruns and 3-week holiday breaks and this and that. It just probably feels like less when you're, but when you see
it does. It feels longer too, like a longer amount of time is passing on the show, as opposed to like, oh, that all happened in one day, I guess, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we only ever kissed Mac on the mouth like twice, like probably in all the years.
In all the times that we were bunny ears. I mean, you got off easy if you only had to kiss him twice.
We'll cut it. But so
no, I'm leaving that in. I don't care. I never had a kiss, Mac. It's a joke.
Can't you see that getting splashed across the headlines? Like Macaulay
Culkin forced his employees to kiss him to keep their jobs, and then we have to call him and be like, "Dude, it was a joke. We were just joking. Like, we'll make an announcement that you never made us kiss you."
Mea culpa. But it's the last thing he needs. But okay, so then that's when Mr. Sheffield realizes the phone.
It's so funny. We accidentally Me Too our boss in a fake way. That's a funny bit.
I know, and then we're the huge assholes for
yeah, that's funny. All right.
Okay, but so then Mr. Sheffield realizes the phone isn't plugged in, and I was gonna say Miss Fine, and then Fran looks at him sheepishly, and she's like, making you think I was talking to Hillary Clinton. Smart. Forgetting to plug the phone in. Stupid. And then she kind of like makes a run for it. At which point he grabs her and like actually hugs her. It's like maybe the one time he's ever chased her, grabbed her, and then hugged her, as opposed to
and she's smiling. They freeze frame and she's got a big smile on her face. It was cute.
Yeah, because, you know, she's obviously coming back. He apologized, so she's going to come back. And that's the whole episode.
And then we get my favorite part, which is the credits have it's all clips of all of her different fashion over 3 seasons, which I thought was really cool. It was like everything she's ever worn, all her like best costumes, which was fun. This is like really heavy work on the editor's part.
Oh God.
Got to be so hard.
Yeah. I mean, we even were like, should we make a clip episode of the podcast? And then we were like, that would take forever.
Yeah. I was going to do a funny bit for this episode where like, instead of doing this episode, we just did clips of the old episodes. But then I was like, that's not worth it. That's too hard.
I mean, maybe if we didn't have jobs, that could be something we did. But, hey guys, spread the word about this podcast, and maybe we won't have to have those jobs.
That's right.
This nanny memorabilia podcast can
help us
bring in all the income we need. So then that's the episode. Do you want to get into some favorite lines and moments?
We should do some segments.
Mm-hmm.
And now segments.
So segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria. Alrighty.
Favorite lines and moments. What do you got?
I really liked Fran going, I could never betray Maggie's trust like that. And then she'd start snitching on me. I really liked the who loves your baby when Niles is trying to save his own skin after Fran is storming out. And then there was this one line where Brighton approaches Mr. Sheffield and he's like, Dad, I can't believe that you threw Fran out in the street in the middle of winter without even a coat. And Mr. Sheffield's like, who told you that? Because like it's clearly not true. And then Niles pops up and goes, does it really matter where the boy who has a Playboy hidden in the hamper heard it? Like clearly being like, Brighton, like, don't you blow my cover or I'm going to blow your cover.
Yeah. And then also you got Gracie's like, Dad, if you and Fran split up, who do we live with? And he goes, oh, me, sweetheart. And she goes, oh. And then he like walks away and she turns to Brighton and she just goes, find her.
Yes. That actually reminded me, something I forgot to say is in one of the flashbacks, we flashback to the pilot, and you truly see how much these kids have grown, and it is like shocking.
Yeah, that was another Elizabeth note, was like when they got to that scene, she went, "Ooh, they've really grown up." I was like, yeah, they're like different people at this point.
Like
it's only been 3 years.
I didn't remember Maggie ever even being that little.
Yeah, she was a babe on this, like a little tiny little kid.
Oh, it sounded like you were saying.
Now she's like, no, she was just like a wee baby. And now she's like, like I don't know, 12?
No. I said Maggie, the oldest.
Oh, Maggie. Oh, I was talking about Gracie.
I know, but
Gracie
also it's funny to me that you referred to her as a babe in the literal sense. Like she's just a babe, like from Gigi. As opposed to
like total babe.
Yeah, I was like, ew, why are you calling her a babe when we're saying how young she is?
No.
No, I know.
Oh, geez. Another great line was the cops bring Yetta back and they're like, what happened? And the cop's like, we found her wandering around on Queens Boulevard. She says she lives here. And he like kind of makes like the crazy hand with his, sign with his finger. And then Yetta just leans into Maxwell and she goes, play along. It's cheaper than a cab.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. I did like when Niall, so at one point, Mr. Sheffield says something like, oh gosh, like I can't believe it's getting so late. And Niles just goes, time flies when you're being unreasonable. Because basically the whole family is against him. Even Cece, like in her sort of new iteration of almost like accepting Fran's presence in their lives, she goes, oh, I'm going to miss Miss Fine. We were getting so close. And you can almost tell, like, I don't even think it was done in a way or said in a way where she's lying. I think she's just like so delusional in her own way that like now when she remembers Fran, she's like, yes, we were chummy. Because she's so pathetic. In terms of Yiddish, if we're ready for Yiddish, we got Schmagegi, which is like hot air, nonsense, baloney.
Yeah.
Nanny trivia. I'm actually doing some carryover trivia from last week when we talked about Brenda Cooper, the costume designer on the show. In the reading I was doing about her, she revealed some really interesting like episode trivia that there just wasn't enough time to get to last week, but I wanted to make sure I shared it because it was so funny. She said that, in the episode where Fran gets stuck in the elevator and she is like caressing Mr. Sheffield's face with her feet while she like, tells him don't worry, you're going to find somebody someday. It turns out they used like a stunt double to be hanging out of the elevator. But when they saw her feet for the shot, it turned out she had horrible bunions. And they were like, oh God. And so I don't know if they ended up replacing her or if we go back and look closely, we'd be like, oh my God, Fran has terrible bunions. But it made me want to go back and take a look at that.
That's so funny.
Because that was just some like funny insider, info. And she was only saying it because I think the interviewer was like, do you have any like crazy stories you can remember? And she's like, nothing too crazy. She's just, she was like, but it's just, sometimes just really unexpected stuff would happen and you'd have to like roll with the punches. Like the time when this woman had horrible bunions and we were like, should we actually make these Fran's feet?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, now I want to go see.
What if we go back and it's like we were like, how did we not notice that like the toenails were several inches long and curled around
and yellow?
And then I said for the Fran or the CC, it's pretty impossible to say with this one. Like this was a clip episode. But much like the Fran, I will storm out and get really angry and then, kind of want to just shirk back in a little later. Like, I don't actually. Man.
It's so funny you said that. That was literally going to be my joke here. Is I was going to be like, well, I don't know who the Fran or the CC is, but much like Fran, if you call me stupid, I am out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I can be hot-headed in that way. And then
you're a real hothead. That's how I always describe you to people. They're like, what's it like working with Tori? I'm like, she's a real fucking hothead.
You're like, boy, is she a vision, but
you guys know that famous clip of Bill O'Reilly being like, we'll do it live. That's what Tori is like whenever we record. I'm like, Tori, do you want to go over this? She's like, we'll do it live. We'll do it live.
And then Sean famously is always screaming about how the frogs are gay. So we really do have our counterpoints in pop culture and media.
We do.
But no, I definitely I don't really need to be apologized to, but I also don't like apologizing.
That's
so,
right. Same.
You know, I like it to be sort of a like, we just kind of settle back into normalcy.
It's just like, we are not fighting anymore. Let's never speak of this again and get no real closure.
Yeah. You know, I think anyone who had siblings probably feels that way. You know, because you never were like, I'm really sorry. It's just more like you both ended up like chuckling at something that was on TV and it just released the tension and then things were normal again.
So my favorite clip show of all time is the Community clip show. And I think it's the most clever use of clip show because and I believe Always Sunny in Philadelphia also does something similar. But basically what it is like they start to remember things they've done, but all of the flashback clips that we get are new clips of things that we never saw before that never happened on the show. And then on Always Sunny in Philadelphia, they do a similar thing, only they flash back and they're just misremembering things that happened. So like, it's like not the way things actually went. And both those uses of clip shows, I think, are really smart. So if this got you in the mood for like clip shows and you want to see like some clever uses of clip shows, I highly, highly, highly recommend Community. I think it's like season 2 of Community where they did
I would argue,
and it's funny that it's season 2 because like there had only been like one season of clips to even show. So you're like, are they really going to do a clip show right now? Like it's only been one season.
Well, but here's the thing. Like I would argue that neither of those are actual clip shows. Those are shows making fun of clip shows. And, you know, there's no actual like, you know, it's not like a new clever use of clip show. It's like,
well, sure it is.
Well, I guess it's more like parody of clip show. I'm trying to remember. Oh God, I wish I could remember it. It was like a movie or TV show. I think it was a movie that came out relatively recently, and everybody was oh my God, I know what it was. It was the third installment of the 50 Shades of Grey movie. Okay. Everyone was making fun of it because the last scene was like a memory montage and some of it had just happened literally like 40 minutes earlier in that same movie. So it's like so stupid and like such a premature flashback. You're like, wait, we just saw that one.
Well, Toria, that's funny you say that because that reminds me of the time we talked about No, I'm not going to do it. I really thought about all the various ways to do this. And I was ultimately like, I don't want to go back and listen to old episodes and find clips. So I'm not.
Yeah, we hear ourselves enough.
It's enough. Speaking of which, that brings this episode to a close. Unless you have any last thoughts on this one.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nada.
You know, I'm grateful because we've been doing a series of like 1 hour diatribes on this show. So this was a nice tight 30. If you like this episode or you like other episodes, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. That's where our bread and butter is, babies. It gets more people to listen to the show, which brings those ad rev dollars in. Give them to us. We are not rolling in it, and we would love to be. As Toria previously mentioned, it would be great to quit our day jobs and just be professional nanny podcasters. What we will do when the show runs out of episode, who knows?
Oh, that'll be sad.
I'll tell you what, the Gilmore guys, they swerved, and now they're the Maisel. They have a really funny name, like the Maisel Mitzvahs or something, and they do Marvelous Miss Maisel.
We're going to be the dinosaur dudes.
That's right. Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
But for now, we are Oh Mr. Sheffield podcast. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Chef Pod. If you want to email us, you can email us at Mr. Sheffield Podcast at gmail.com. And that's it. That's it out of us. Toria, this is fun, but it's time for us to be done now with this episode. So I'm sorry, but
so
goodbye.
long. Farewell.
Actually, you know what? Everyone go on and get out of here. Toria, not you.
You got me there. Okay, bye, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.